Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Puck on the Parkway here right before the holidays to talk some New Jersey Devils hockey. And it's as exciting time as ever, really, for these New Jersey Devils. We've got Devils Rangers at 1 p.m. at the Rock tomorrow. And I think they've just about hit their stride. I think there's another ceiling that they can hit and some glass to break through, but we'll get into all that. I'm James Worley alongside Daniel Rebane. It's very cold in the New Jersey area. I think it's below freezing for the past 3 days now, but that's how you know when the hockey really starts to kick up is when that weather seeps in. So, Dan, how's the winter weather treating you? And are you getting excited for Christmas?
I mean, if you know me, I'm a big lover of the cold weather. This is my element. I love it. It's 17 degrees outside right now.
Yeesh.
A bit windy. I was just at the Palisades Mall in Rockland County, if you know where that is. So, getting some last minute shopping in there. So we're all done. Getting ready for Christmas in a couple of days and, you know, spending time with some fam, but not before some Devils Rangers today when you're watching the video, but tomorrow for us since we're recording Sunday night. So I can't wait. We'll be previewing that game shortly, but there's been a bunch of games already this month of December, and the Devils are looking good.
It's first time in a while that we've actually gotten to get out an episode. I don't think we've spoken with you guys since early November, so before Thanksgiving, and a lot has happened in then. The last time we spoke, it was Jack Hughes's quote that I think we're about to pop and start to play our best hockey, and I think
Oh,
they've
they
kind
popped
of
all
done
right.
that. I mean, suffice it to say, the team still stands firmly in first place in the Metropolitan Division, and I say firmly because they do have those extra games played over the Capitals and Hurricanes, but the Hurricanes did us a little bit of a favor, taking down the Rangers. To this afternoon, I should say, but if you're listening to this yesterday afternoon, and hopefully you listen to this before the Devils and Rangers drop the puck at 1 p.m. So it's been a great month and a half since we last cut everything up. But let's hone in on December specifically. I think there's a few games here and there that even if the results didn't go the Devils' way, there's a lot to like. Obviously, they started the month with that 5-1 win at the Garden. Really drove the
Oh,
Rangers fans out. I think that was part of the start of this now um, sort of shakeup at MSG. I think it's been long discussed this culture of what they've got ongoing over there ever since the Barclay Goodrow disaster from the offseason, the fallout of Jacob Truba now kind of sucks in Capo Caco, and the replacement for Capo Caco was always going to be Matt Rempe getting called up from the AHL, and that just did not go the way they wanted it to. Even though he was playing pretty good hockey at the start of that game, man, he really was. But that was the start of the month. Devils up 5-1 over the Rangers. They got the Kraken at home. I was at that game. It was a really tight game back and forth that they were able to sneak out. And I think a lot of the games this month, especially once they hit the corner at the end of November, for me, it's been about controlling the entire game defensively. I mean, just last night, conceding only 12 shots to the Penguins. It's not an amazing Penguins team, but a Penguins team that's going to be in a playoff race. It's going to be pushing for a wild card. And the fact that the Devils, Sheldon Keefe called it a commitment, and it absolutely was. Defensively, these guys have been fantastic. I go back to that 2-1 loss against the Maple Leafs that I was at
I was
in
also at that.
overtime.
Yep.
Yeah, you were there.
Oh,
Yeah, that's right. That was honestly, as far as the performance goes, fantastic hockey by the
one of
Devils.
their best games.
Just couldn't figure it out. And
Yeah.
you know what? We always have good games at home against the Leafs.
Hmm.
Whether the Devils get spanked or the Devils put on a spanking or it's a tight game, it's always entertaining hockey. That was one of the best displays I've seen back and forth. They gave Austin Matthews one too many overtime breakaways, and that's what did it. But they outshot Toronto like 15-5 at the end of the first period in that one. And I remember thinking, if this gets to the third period and it's still nothing, they're going to be in bad shape. And unfortunately, that is what came to pass. A bad goal to give up in that game. But other than that, I think that's the one shaky performance you chalk up to Markstrom. The one shaky performance where you say this is a pattern, but now they're starting to score goals. They're starting to win first periods a little bit more. And I think they hit a stride after that. 3 straight wins following that loss against LA, Chicago. They took 3 of 5, 7 of 10 possible points at that homestand. So that was good. Could have been better, but still good. They went on the road, beat St. Louis, which they almost never do, and
Yeah.
then a trap game against Columbus. They almost came back in that one. A slow start there, but honestly, I think they earned the night off on that particular occasion. And then a dominant performance against the Penguins, where it kind of felt like that Leafs game. They're out shooting them, they're outplaying them, but one chance here or there for the opposition might lose that game, but they stuck with it and they ended up sorting it out. Timo Meyer gets the empty netter to seal that one. 2-point night for Nico Hischier. And now that brings us to previewing this Devils Rangers game, their final game before a home and home before the end of the new year after Christmas against Carolina. This is a big stretch. I mean, I know it's the Rangers team is not one that was challenging for cups just a year ago. It feels like a different team already for them, but this is the teams that you're going to have to beat at the top of your division. How do you see the rest of December shaking out, and what do you make of the previous few games that I mentioned there?
Yeah, I actually want to bring up that Columbus game because, I think that was again one of their better games of the year. It's just, they couldn't get goals. Elvis Merzlikins was on his game, made some saves. Jack Hughes had 13 shots himself. And you'll have games like that. I said to my parents when I got home after that Toronto game, I was like, of course I went to the game where they dominate but lose.
Mm-hmm.
There's only a
Yeah.
handful a season, and I was at one of them. But I think they've played well, especially defensively. I think we have to bring up that stat. They've conceded 20 shots or less in six straight, and seven of their last eight. Like you brought up that Toronto game, they had one shot. They conceded one shot in back-to-back games in the first period. I mean that never happens for a Devils team,
Mm-hmm.
especially in this
Especially not
era.
recently.
In this era, that stat of six straight games of holding a team under 20 shots, that goes back to the 90s. That goes back to the dynasty era Devils. So, I mean, if you're getting compared defensively to those teams, I mean, I think they're doing something really well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's led to, a resurgence in Jacob Markstrom. And, his stats have shown it. He's 6-0-1 in his last 7 games. And he's got a 94.2% save percentage. I mean, that's exactly what you asked for when you traded for him. Obviously, he's not getting peppered with 40 shots a game, but you know, it's almost as hard to save 19 shots a game when all the action is on the other side of the ice and you're cold on your side of the ice. So, shout out to him, stepping up when the team needs him. Especially last game against the Penguins, on his back makes a glove save on Crosby to push the puck onto the post. I mean that puck goes in, it's a different game. So, they get 3-0 shutout, and now we're heading into a Monday night matinee with the Rangers, and we'll see how that game goes. But they've been struggling recently, and it only got worse when Matt Rempe, makes another run at someone in the back and suspended 8 games. So what did you think of that play, and what do you think of the Rangers recently?
Well, I mean, here's what I'll say. I still think, generally speaking about the Rangers, they're a good hockey team. Let's not infantilize them so much because they've had all these struggles this year. They're still not out of a playoff race. They're mid right now. They're not awful, but they should be great, right? They were a team that was in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, Eastern Conference Finals 3 seasons ago. This is the team that should be atop the Metropolitan Division. They have the best goalie in the world for my money. So not often you go on a Devils podcast and hear all these flattering things about the Rangers, but the fact of the matter is there's an attitude right now with that team, and speaking with a lot of fans and analyst reporters of that team, the consensus is there's just no feeling of superiority. There's no feeling of belonging, and there's dread. There's lack of effort on the ice, and that's showing based on just how people have talked about what's going on there. Trouba had some choice words after he was shipped out, the captain, and Capo Caco, after being scratched, was like, I don't understand this, but I guess that was for precautionary trade reasons in the end. I mean, he seemed to be dissatisfied on the way out. Twitter and just social media in general has been having a field day with the whole Capo Caco getting traded thing. Devils fans are having a good time on that platform. Let's just leave it at that. As for the Rempe hit, it was obviously like sinister, and it just so happened he had been playing a pretty decent game until that point. He's played, I think, now combined 23 games in the playoffs and a regular season in his career. He's gotten 4 ejections, 9 major penalties. This is his second suspension, and it's 8 games. Not often is a second suspension as many as 8 games. But in that short of amount of time, I think it's very clear the office he provides on the ice, and I think it was only a matter of time before he had a very lengthy suspension. It just so happens that the first game he will be eligible to return in January 9th, Devils Rangers at the Garden. Um, and you have your opinions on him as a hockey player and what he provides and whether or not he's a dirty player. I mean, I'll leave it up to you, the listener, to decide that. I think I've made my case on his record there, but he does add a little bit more of an allure to a Devils Rangers game. I mean, he's taken runs at Siegenthaler and Bastian already. I'm not saying that it's a good thing. He had that pretty good heavyweight tilt with Curtis McDermott last year. I'm not endorsing that type of hockey at all, but having him on the ice for Devils Rangers does make things just a little bit more exciting. So for January 9th, it could be something different, a different dimension to the Devils Rangers game that we didn't see in that 5-1 win earlier, and that we probably won't see tomorrow or this afternoon if you're listening to the show. So as far as that goes, I think it's rooted in the deeper issue with what's going on in Manhattan at the Garden there, and I think this is going to be the first time in a long time where the Devils will seriously outnumber Rangers fans at the Prudential Center. I think Rangers fans, I mean, there's still so many of them. Original Six team, New York City, there's always going to be so many of them. I think now, though, Devils fans are more excited about watching their hockey team than Rangers fans, and for good reason. So I'm expecting a pro Devils crowd at the Rock tomorrow, heavily so. And I think that having to play on a back-to-back against another tough, speedy team in the Hurricanes, if you're New York, I think they're at a serious disadvantage tomorrow. I think both locker rooms are really going to be pushing for a win. It's your last game before the holiday break. The Rangers, they got to get something going, right? They have to, and this is a big chance on enemy ice against a big rival. But for the Devils, you got to keep this thing rolling, man. This is your big rival. You got to go into the break before you go spend time with your families. This would be a huge win for either team. I think both teams have a lot to play for. I think the Devils are coming in with obviously a few advantages here. But a win for the Rangers could be super galvanizing. So the Devils should not take them lightly. And I think a win for either team could be a massive, massive step in the right direction for where they want to be at the end of the year.
I'll just say one last thing on the Rangers. I think they have really good players, but
Obviously,
I just don't think they're a good team combined. You know, we've seen their struggles. You know, 5-on-5. You know, we know they're a good power play unit. Maybe not so this year as much, but whatever it is, it's just like when you put all those players together, they just haven't been able to live up to the expectations. And what's happened this offseason and then coming into this year with Chris Jury, you know, trying to trade players that have no trade, you know, no move clause, no trade clauses, and you know, they reject them and then he puts them on waivers. You know, I think that just, you know, rubs a bunch of the players the wrong way that are still
yeah,
in that locker room. Obviously, you know, Trouba's the captain, you know, players still kind of looked up to him as a leader. Maybe not so much this year because they knew those rumors coming into the season. But, you know, when you see that happened to two players, you know, if Trouba didn't accept that trade, he was going to get upset on waivers. So, you know,
it's crazy.
you see that happen twice to a player and you're like, man, that could be me next. You know, so we'll see what happens across the river going forward. But I think you said it. This is an opportunity for the Devils to go into the Christmas break with all the momentum, get another win over your rival, and keep the pace going top of the Metropolitan Division because you know there's three teams right now separating themselves. The Devils, the Hurricanes, and surprisingly the Capitals. I just want to say I did predict the
You
Capitals
did.
to make the playoffs.
I did not.
Didn't think they'd be this good, but I saw the potential, and I'll just say they were looking real good. So, one last thing before we move on to a different point, I think you wanted to bring up Stefan Noesen and what he's
Yeah.
done so far this year. I'll lump Paul Cotter in there. Obviously, he's you know kind of tailed off a bit, but I think what both those players have done for this lineup this season has been terrific.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Paul Cotter started the year so strongly. I think people were very quick to celebrate the trade with Alex Holtz, and I know a lot of people had high hopes for Alex Holtz as a New Jersey Devil, but it seems like the way his career has gone, it's going to take a little bit more time for him to really acclimate to the NHL and be a productive piece for an NHL team. As for Cotter, he's kind of hit a bit of a roadblock lately, but has in the last couple games started to electrify his game again. I think playing next to Jack Hughes helps a little bit. I think the best, statistically, according to the advanced numbers, the best second line for the Devils this year has been Hughes, Bratt, and Palat, statistically. And while Palat has been a guy who was quick to be criticized, kind of become the scapegoat for this Devils team, has hit a bit of a corner in December. He's performed better than he has in a regular season as a Devil. Honestly, maybe in his entire Devils career at this point. And that's obviously something you want from your veteran presence on the wing. But I think we'll get to some roster areas that they could improve upon moving forward. But as for Stefan Noesen, I mean, he's already hit his career high in 15 goals. He was a guy that Devils fans were enamored with before he left to go to Carolina. And he made it very clear in the post-game presser the other day that he was never given the chance to be a prime productive player on that Carolina team. Very dense top six. And he's kind of got that third line DNA all over him. Let's be real.
I mean, that's where we thought he'd be at.
And he still could, right? Because like I said, we'll get to some roster needs to address. But if I look at the like I said, the top lines in the NHL at 5-on-5, the best expected goals for per 60 minutes is Nico Hischier, Timo Meier, and Stefan Noesen. That's the Devils' first line. It's the best first line according to that metric in the NHL for groups that have played at least 75 minutes on the ice together. It's second in expected goals for percentage. So I think that there's a lot to like about Stefan Noesen's game. The extra element of physicality he brings, net front presence, and just overall efficiency. He's still the most efficient power play scorer in the National Hockey League. I have to get the numbers for how many power play goals he has. I believe it was 8.
And we'll say, like, we were clamoring for
7.
him to be on that power play unit early.
Yes, we were.
And see what happens when he was inserted. That power play is skyrocketed with him on the post, like Zach Hyman. I think, he's not Zach Hyman. Zach Hyman's I'd say a much more prolific goal scorer, but I mean, he's doing what he needs to do in front of the net, and he's, getting the garbage goals that the Devils haven't gotten in recent years. And it's been a great thing to see. I mean, he's on pace for 30 goals. Like, the only time he's had 20 plus goals in a professional season was in 21-22 when he was in the AHL with the Chicago Wolves, and he scored 48. So he's doing his job right now.
And real quick, mention how good the Devils have been at 5-on-5, specifically that top line when Stefan Noesen is on it. The Devils' best line is, according to the advanced statistics on Money Puck, is whatever line Nico Hischier's on.
Yeah.
So I think we've kind of slowed down on how much praise we've given Nico. He had a 2-point night against Pittsburgh yesterday.
I think he actually 3.
3? It was a 3?
Yeah.
That's my mistake. 3-point night for Nico. And that makes sense if Timo had the empty netter. I should have put that together.
Yeah, he blocked the shot. Remember?
He did block the shot. You're right. Oh, that counts as an assist. This is hockey. They count everything as
Love
an assist.
it.
That they should. The Devils also have the highest expected goals for at 5-on-4 in the NHL. I believe in terms of expected goals percentage, they're top 10, and at goals percentage, they're 12th, which is below the Rangers even, but they still have a better clip at the percentage. So the advanced stats don't favor their power play so much. I think the beginning of the season is also keeping them out of the top 10 in that regard. But at 5-on-5, I mean, this Devils team is as good as you could ask them to be. I still think there's another gear to hit, though. I still, for as much as we can say there's been improvement over last year, I think there's still some areas in which offensively they need to get back to what they were doing 2 seasons ago. There were some games that they stole. I don't think they haven't, this run of games that they've been playing really well on, they haven't stolen a single one. They've been defending teams off the ice. 12 shots. Are you kidding me? Against Pittsburgh? Like, that was the sort of game the Devils were winning a couple seasons ago. If you remember, they would get outshot by 7 or 8, and then they would piece together 3 crazy goals in the third period, and they just never looked like they could lose. This season is a little bit different. They've addressed the issues defensively. They're perhaps the best defensive team in the league. It's certainly in my lifetime, this is the best team defense I've ever seen the Devils play.
I
I
mean,
didn't have the privilege of living through those Cup
yeah.
glory years, or at least didn't live through them long enough to remember them. But this is something special.
I mean, when you look at, 2 of the 3 pairs we have,
Yeah, just shut down.
even with like you think like Luke Hughes would be like, maybe a bit of a liability. No, him and
Not this
Brad
year.
Pesci have just, defensively, I've hit a stride that I never expected from them. You have Jonas Siegenthaler and Johnny Kovacevic just being one of the best deep pairings in the league. I mean, just what a turnaround, some of these guys have had this year, especially Siegenthaler. Obviously, he dealt with his injuries last year, the foot injury and the concussion. Kovacevic coming in from Montreal, not being,
He never really got a fair shot like
utilized
he
as
did
much.
now.
Like he's playing so good. He's keeping a second overall pick in the minors. Like I think that's all you gotta say. Like, this team defensively has bought into blocking shots. Even offensively, I think Nason or Dylan talked about Jack Hughes defensively this year, and they're right. Like he's just all over the ice playing penalty kill. He's playing 30 seconds of
Yeah,
penalty kill
Jack Hughes
per
penalty
game.
killer.
He got his first penalty kill point of his career. The whole team, like when you see a guy like Jack Hughes, not throwing the most vicious hits, but throwing his body out there, stick lifting players. When you see a guy like that, your best offensive player, your superstar, it sparks you. So this team defensively has stepped up in front of Jacob Markstrom. Markstrom's playing good behind them when shots get through. They're clicking on all cylinders right now. And you said offensively they can take another jump because defensively right now they're playing as good as they can.
Yeah, I think that there's still some figuring out to do with the bottom six,
Yeah.
specifically, and part of that is because they haven't fully figured out the top six. I think for now, they're like I said, their best top two lines: Hischier, Meyer, Nason, and then Hughes, Bratt, Palat. I mean, it doesn't sound super attractive to have Andre Palat playing top 6 minutes at this point in his career and what he's able to provide, but like I said, he hit a bit of a corner, turned a bit of a corner, and has been playing a bit better hockey. Paul Cotter, for his speed, you'd like him to be able to play with Hughes and Brad, provide a little bit of that physicality. But I think if he can get back to that form he found at the beginning of the season, then maybe you can have that discussion again. But like defensively, I mean, you said not only are they keeping Nemeth down in the American League, but Seamus Casey's still down there too.
Yeah.
And Santeri Hataka, I mean, he was skating the other day, I believe. Or no, he's out long term. Who was skating the other day that was just coming back? Was it Lazar?
Yeah, well, Lazar's, dealing with his knee
Yeah.
injury. He came back for a game, it was started to bark on him. He'll be
Mm-hmm.
back after the Christmas break. Hataka was brought up. I believe he's skating, but I don't think he's anywhere near returning.
Right.
So
the point that I was going to make there was how many NHL teams would love to have one of those three guys playing full-time minutes on their blue line. The Devils have got down to as many as 9 defensemen that could be playing serious NHL minutes at this point. And for my money, they've gotten the right 6 up there, and they're doing some pretty good work. I mean, the strides that Luke Hughes has made, I mean, we can't say it enough.
Yeah.
We were worried for a moment there that some of the offensive production might have gone to the wayside. Since then, he's kind of added the assists back into his game, scored a big goal as well against Seattle. So I think he's primed now to be playing that complete style. But to see what he's done defensively, the strides in one season is remarkable. One guy that, again, similar to he's in the same sort of limbo as Cotter and Palat, I would say, is Dawson Mercer in terms of finding that form again, using his legs, skating really well. He's done a bit of that in recent games, but I still think he's a leg below where he needs to be in terms of the role the Devils become to expect him to play. If not, I think he's going to be buried on that third line for a while, because he really does have the ability to play top 6 minutes and could have been the answer to that missing need. With that said, though, I still have faith that the 12 guys that are playing forward for this team right now, and even like a guy like Justin Dowling who came in and did a good job filling in, guys can come in and out of this team and really be impactful. So while I still think there's another gear to reach, maybe one or two guys you add to bolster that really forward. The construction is there, the chemistry is there. They've been playing good hockey. There's a couple stragglers here and there that you'd wish could be pitching in a bit more, but have their own strengths. Like Eric Holla, the point production hasn't been the secondary scoring that we would like from him, but defensively he's been phenomenal this year. I mean, penalty kill, blocking shots, he's been all over it.
Yep.
Tomas Tatar, clearly not the same player he was on this Devils team 2 years ago. He's not going to have a 50 something point season, 40 something point season, but he's to the type of guy that can, be on a fourth line and have that skill that guys, whether it's Lazar or whether it's Bastion providing that physicality, he brings a little bit skill to that realm, whether it's the fourth or third line. So I like his inclusion on this roster, even if he becomes health bombed for bringing in a new winger. I mean, we're going to get into it maybe a bit more specifically, but any areas on the ice that you'd like to really see them go after, maybe a trade acquisition or something new to really separate themselves at the top of this division?
Yeah, well, let's get into it right now. I think we talked about that top six winger that goes next to Hughes and Brown.
The Toffoli type.
Yeah, obviously, Palat's doing the best he can, and granted, he's been a real positive on that line this month. He's putting up points. He's playing much better. But I think if this team really wants to take that next step, I think you need a bit more of pizzazz in that spot, or maybe just a better version of Paul Cotter, like more skillful Paul Cotter. I don't know if you can get that on the market right now, but I think at the worst you can go and get someone like a Taylor Hall, maybe
Taylor Hall, man.
Kyle Palmieri, the Islanders are going to be
making
sellers.
My day with these names.
Like obviously you can make reunions with those two guys. Maybe there's a more premium guy out there that could be available.
There's nothing more premium than Palms.
But I mean, if you put maybe a Palmieri next to those two, I think that might be the perfect scenario for Price and what he can do on the ice still. I mean, what do you think about if they can swing a Palmieri trade?
I think Palmieri I would prefer over even Taylor Hall. I think for one, Taylor Hall was pretty eager to get out of New Jersey once things went pretty poorly, but I'm not sure how much of that is true. Smoke is just noise sometimes. Kyle Palmieri was embodied the New Jersey Devils for me. So from an emotional standpoint, I would love to have Kyle Palmieri back. He's a Jersey kid as well. And I also do think that the way he's adapted his game since he left New Jersey and has gotten a little bit older is one of those things that like you wish every NHL player could figure out. For him though, he's not that high octane scoring first liner who gets the cross ice feed and has to snipe it. I mean, he was kind of forced into that role for the Devils. I mean, he was good, but he never should have had to be their best player, unfortunately. As far as the way the Islanders have him play is he's a good secondary scorer. He's a good second chance scorer. He's a good physical presence. He's a good guy who can play in the middle six at this point in his career.
Sounds like something the Devils could use right there.
And the Devils not only could use that, but that's kind of something that the Devils could use specifically to help, nurture the second line and bolster the third line. If they can get a guy like him, even Taylor Hall has kind of filled that role at this point in his career. I would rather Palmieri. I also can't hurt to add another right shot because the Devils have very few of those up top. So I mean Palmieri. I mean, like you could have brought up Adam Henrique, and I would give you 10 million reasons why the Devils should go after him too. I really wanted them to do it in the offseason, but as far as it goes, there's room for another guy there. I don't think it has to be someone who's scoring 30 something goals like Tyler Toffoli. That worked out until it didn't. But there's room there for that one more guy, I think. And I think Palmieri fits the bill of the type of profile you want. If they could get someone maybe has a little bit more goals in them at this point, I would go for that too. But I love Palmieri as the option.
I'll say this. I mean, he's on pace for, 27 goals and
Yeah,
almost 60 points. So he's still
that's
able to
exactly it's
put up
exactly the
offense
threshold you want to
on
see.
an Islander team. So,
Mhm.
I mean, if you're able to get him next to, a Hughes and Brad, I mean, that's definitely something, that we could see maybe in a month or month and a half. Because obviously, Tom Fitzgerald likes to get his business done earlier than the trade deadline just to
Yeah,
get, the players more acclimated to a stretch run. And then I'll say, one I think, we're saying the top six winger, but I think, if you can get a a bottom six center just to solidify, face-offs. Because we both like Curtis Lazar, but I think his injury with his knee, because obviously they didn't tell us what his injury was. I was just expecting he was going to be out for the year, and then you just see him skating randomly. You're like, oh, I
yeah.
guess he's back.
What a
So
tough cookie.
I'm gonna guess he had like meniscus repair, which is like 6 to 8 weeks, I believe.
That is
Um,
correct.
so
Speaking from experience.
So if you're able to just maybe move him to the wing, if possible, you get maybe a bottom line center that can take face-offs, play defensively, chip in whenever. I think that's, more, I guess, like a luxury, I would say. But at least maybe get one more bottom line guy that can produce offensively. If
Yeah,
they're able to get something for like a mid round pick or something like that. I don't think that's like a big need for the team, but I think those are the two moves you would make at a deadline or heading towards the deadline. Because I think defensively they're fine. I think, once you get to the playoffs,
absolutely fine.
because I don't think first of all, I don't think the Comets are going to make the playoffs with their start to the season. So once we get to the
Yeah.
playoffs,
You don't think?
both Mason and Casey will be up here anyway. So I think defensively they're fine. They don't need to make any moves there. Um, and then I think you just get that top line winger, whoever that is, and then maybe bolster the bottom six with a center, an extra center. Because again, the Devils don't have much center depth. Obviously, Justin Dowling's doing the best he can, and he's doing a good job for,
I've liked
a,
Dowling's game.
for a 34-year-old that doesn't have much NHL experience. He's doing really good. Obviously most games you don't notice him, and that's pretty good for a fourth line center. You don't really want to notice them for the
Hmm.
most part, unless there's like scoring goals or making big plays, like Lazar's done a couple of times. But he's doing good. But I think if you can reinforce that position down the middle, because obviously you got three really solid guys. Lazar, if he wasn't hurt, would have been the fourth. But I think if you could take that pressure off his knees and he could just be a winger, take some faceoffs here and there. I think this team could do some damage in the playoffs if they're rolling like this. What do you think about a bottom six edition possibility?
Let me start with this. A player who will not be named that left the Devils team um, midway through last season, one of two who left the team midway through last season, was really in this role, right? He was kind of had his this place locked up, cemented for at least a decent while. I think had that player still been around, and I'm not saying he should be by any stretch of the imagination, I think Erik Haula either wouldn't be a New Jersey Devil or would be cemented as the fourth line center.
Yep.
And seeing the way that he's played this year, I love Erik Haula. I love what he provides defensively. I think he would be that fourth line center.
Yeah.
And I think we'd be looking at a fourth line of Tatar, Haula, and Nathan Bastian, or Tatar, Haula, and Lazar. And I mean, that's pretty.
Yeah,
Pretty good.
there's a bunch of options. You
There's a bunch of
move
options, but they're all
Haula
pretty
down,
damn
yeah.
good. And there's a lot of flexibility there. You could play Haula off the wing. You
Yep.
could play Lazar off the wing. You could play Haula off the third line wing, and he is no longer.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Third line center could be a real option.
So I see them looking there for an additional player, because right now I believe they were running the line with Palat, Haula, and Bratt as the third line to try to get Dawson Mercer and Cotter going, playing them next to Hughes.
Yeah,
On
they're
the
kind of
second
rotating.
line,
Yeah.
I like that rotation. I like that idea. I still think at the end of the day, the best second line is going to be Hughes, Palat, Bratt. If you can add another guy into the top six,
Yeah, like you
then
said.
you're looking at a third line of Palat, Haula, Mercer, or Palat, Haula, Cotter, and then a fourth line when Lazar's healthy of Tatar, Lazar. Wow, that is hilarious. Tatar, Lazar, and Palat, or Tatar, Lazar, Cotter, and Nathan Bastian comes out of the lineup maybe. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of where to bolster this. I say if you get a third line center, someone like Adam Henrique, maybe, I don't know. If you get someone like that,
Shout out to Edmonton, man.
yeah, Edmonton, that hurts. But
Losers.
I still think that there's a lot of flexibility with how they go about this.
Mm-hmm.
I think, but like you said, I think if they unlock that, if they find that right piece to fit in, and the fourth line looks like Tatar, Haula, and Curtis Lazar. Oh man, I think that there's a really special makeup of this team. And then, maybe even you got maybe I don't know who maybe Tatar draws out of the lineup, and then you got a fourth line of Cotter, Lazar, and a new addition that to the team, and then the third line looks like Palat, Mercer, and Cotter all together. That way, you get to
There's just flexibility.
There's so many options here.
If you can get that third line center,
this is as deep as the Devils have. Like I'm thinking back to that 2012 team. Obviously, the team that captured my childhood for sure. Yeah. That team was known for how good that fourth line was.
The fourth line carried them.
That fourth line carried us through the playoffs. As good as that first line was, Travis Zajac, Zach Parise, and Ilya Kovalchuk, the middle six, you had your Elias, your Sikora, your Zubris, Henrique, Clarkson. Yeah. I mean, that team was deep. That team had role players, and all those role players came up huge. But I'm looking at the roster construction now, and I'm like, it could, if they bring in that one more guy, it could be even deeper than that team even was. And defensively, the 2012 team was just vibes, man. It was figure it out with Zidlitsky, Volchenkov, a younger Andy Green, a rookie Adam Larson. And maybe you squeeze in Henrik Talinder and Peter Harold when you need to.
Salvador on the back.
Yeah, Salvador. How could I forget? Westfield, New Jersey native Bryce Salvador, future captain. At least at that point, he was a future captain. I mean, this is a nostalgia bait right now. But for me, this team with one more forward is deeper than that team is on both the blue line and at the forward core. I'm really excited about what the prospect looks like for the future, but especially right now, the opportunity that they have in front of them this year. I think Tom Fitzgerald should start making a short list of guys he wants to bolster the center core at the bottom six and the forward core with at the top six with a winger.
Yeah, I'll say, obviously we'll have a future episode maybe dedicated to, we'll taking a deep dive at
we'll go
that winger and that center, and bring up different options and talk about it. But I think, like you said, especially with, the three teams kind of separating each other, and this is kind of setting up to a, who's gonna be in what position at the end of the season. I think the Devils have a real opportunity to get that first seed and, get a wild card team. We'll see what that does, but let's talk about some prospects, like you said, talking about the future. And for the Devils at least, the forwards or the skaters have kind of cooled down offensively. So I'm gonna take this opportunity. We could talk about goaltending, because actually the goaltending has started to heat up a bit. Especially Jacob Malik, out in Finland. He's starting to heat up a bit. He cooled off a bit, but in the month of December, he's starting to heat back up. 10-7-2 record, not the best record overall, but when you look at, goals against the 206, save percentage at 91.8. I mean, when you look at a Jake Allen, I mean, periods he's struggled this year. The Devils are going to be in, they're going to have a battle for that backup position next year behind Jacob Markstrom. And I said it at the beginning of the year. I think Jacob Malik's in a position to win that backup role, especially with the goalies down in Utica this year. I don't know specifics down there, but earlier this season they really struggled. They're starting to get some positive regression in their stats, but
Dawes has been better.
I think Jacob Malik with his size, he compares to a Jacob Markstrom with his size. I mean, I forget who said it, but they were taking pictures of development camp and just rookie camp, and dude's just a massive. He just takes up the whole net. So I think, he has the opportunity to take up that backup role. And then we'll talk about some two draft picks that we got this year. Mikhail Yurgurov in the USHL. He plays on a team that's really not that good, unfortunately. So you have to take his stats, with a grain of salt. But even then, I mean, he still has, like, his team is not that good. He's 3-8-2 his record, but his save percentage is over 900. And in the USHL, having an over 900 save percentage, even on a winning team, is pretty good. So he's off to, I believe, BU next year. So,
Good program.
I'm just saying, that might be a hidden gem, even in the second round. Like that, him going to BU, I think it's BU. I don't know if you want to double check that for me. It's BU or BC, one of the Boston colleges. But shout out to him in the USHL. He's still doing his thing. And then this our second goalie in the draft that we selected didn't play at the beginning of the year, but has started to get games now under his belt in Finland's U20s, and that's Vidi Luivara. Hopefully I said that name right. If I didn't, you can correct me. But
we practiced it a few times.
Yeah. Again, I think his team is bad because he's 0-5, but his stats say otherwise. He has a 269 goals against and a 91.8 save percentage. We said that the Devils are deep in goaltending in the minors, with Dawes and Poulter. But you got three guys over in Europe and a Russian goalie playing in the USHL, putting up some good numbers. So I think going forward, past Jacob Markstrom once he finally retires, because I think, the Devils are his last spot. He might get another contract, but he'll retire here. I think the Devils are setting themselves up really nicely than in prior years, because we remember those years just had nobody in net. Even Blackwood's now taken off, Colorado, but like he was our next.
We always
guy.
Loved Blackwood.
He was our next guy.
He had the potential to be the guy.
And then, obviously nobody else behind him, so all the load is on him. Now we have multiple guys that can, battle for that job and, make each other better. So goaltending looks a bit promising in the future. And, if you add a guy like Jacob Malik to this team next year, to make 20 starts or whatever it is next year, we're looking real good. Real good. This is a cup window for the Devils. So I can't wait. Anything else you want to talk about? Oh yeah,
well, we got a couple we got a couple wishes that we could make. I mean, it is the Christmas time, is the holiday spirit, the New Year's spirit. People make what do you call those? The resolutions for the New Year's.
Yeah.
Like the United Nations making resolutions. So I think it'd be fitting for each of us to come up with at least one thing that we wish pertaining to the Devils, of course, this year. I wish for a lot of things, but as far as the Devils go, if you're going to limit me to one, I would say my one is this, and I hope I'm not stealing yours. I mentioned it before we started recording, and
oh yeah, you're not stealing.
We talk about the roster moves, and I can make all those wishes, and we talk about that. And when it gets time later in the season, I think we'll start to see those come into play, and those discussions get a little bit more real. But for now, while I would assign some praise to Sheldon Keefe, and we haven't talked about Sheldon Keefe at all this episode. A lot of what has gone on with the Devils.
Round of applause to him, real quick.
Absolutely. He's been a
coach
fantastic
of the year front runner.
Coach. Yeah, I think. I think he absolutely deserves to be in the Adams conversation. I think for as good as Toronto have been in his absence, I mean, they were always going to be a good team. The Devils have obviously improved defensively. Not just because of the additions of Kovacevic and Brett Pesce, but the structure is much better. And Lindy Ruff is supposed to be a defensive coach. I know gets a lot of flack online still from Devils fans I mean, people have been pointing at Buffalo and saying, "Hey, see what we warned you about." But
Oh,
I don't want this to be dunking on Lindy Ruff, because I think he had a dive had a time uh, where he was a beneficial coach for this Devils team. Absolutely, he
yeah.
did a lot in terms of producing players and
Mhm.
helping the younger guys be bigger parts of the team, helping Jesper Bratt develop into this two-way forward who has now been the Devils' best performer all
Yeah.
year long this year,
Mhm.
at least to the from the start till now. Jack Hughes could eclipse him and probably will. But with that said, I'll give Keefe more credit for trying to unlock what we saw from Paul Cotter at the beginning of the season by playing him next to Jack Hughes. I think that's a good idea. I still think that having Palat play next to Jack Hughes, trying to capitalize on his recent form, that's a good idea.
Mhm.
However, I think that takes away from Bratt a little bit, putting Bratt on the third line, buried him a little bit. Point production past couple games from him wasn't what we've seen overall. So my wish is figure out the bottom six, make that its own issue, but don't force guys like Hughes and Bratt long term to be solutions to those problems. Keep Hughes and Bratt together. That line is fantastic when those two are together. I believe the best second line has been Palat, Hughes, Bratt. The best first line has been Hischier, Meyer, and Nason. Keep those two together. Keep those two together. Make that your primary ideas for those lines. When you bring in a new winger, you can bump Palat down, and maybe when you bring in a new third line center, you start to think about who Dawson Mercer plays with, who Paul Cotter plays with,
Mhm.
and I think a couple moves in that realm could really transform this team. But keep those two lines together. That's my wish that Sheldon Keefe honors. But I have full faith that even if he doesn't, this team will be okay. I think he's done a great job. And my plea to the fans, I guess this is going to be sub wish 1A. Maybe stop focusing on Lindy Ruff so much. Maybe stop blaming Lindy Ruff for Jonas Siegenthaler having a bad year last year, and maybe just enjoy what we've been able to do this year. Because Lindy Ruff had a time. It didn't end out the way we wanted it to. Time's done. Let's move on. Let's focus on the future. Let's focus on the now. Sheldon Keefe is now doing great work. It's my only caveat. Keep those two lines together. Your wish, Daniel.
Yeah, you said, stop focusing on Lindy Ruff. I'll say if you guys want to keep focusing on that Kako Jack Hughes draft,
That's fun.
that'd be fantastic because
Yeah.
those videos are hilarious. And you know what's going to be even funnier in 2026 when he's a UFA, he signs with the Devils and win
And
a cup,
he fills that bottom six.
and he fills that need. He scores like 25 goals and he's like a productive player for the Devils. That'd be, you know, fantastic. But
Yeah.
I'll say this, I'm a big wisher. Um, I have big wishes. My Christmas list each year, even though I'm getting older, just continues to grow. Um, and if Santa wants to deliver, obviously it's not going to be, right now. He doesn't have to deliver right now. He could deliver it in the middle of next year when it's the summertime. And my wish is if Brady Kachuk is available, you go get him, bring him onto this team, and solidify the top six.
That
Brady
could be
Kachuk
yeah.
and Jack Hughes leading up into the Olympics for the USA. That's all I have to say. Brady Kachuk is my wish. Please, Santa, bring that into the summer. Please.
Yeah, I mean we've talked
I'm
about.
gonna need Ottawa to start losing, man. They're winning too many games,
Hmm.
man. This,
I will say this because the parallels between the Senators and the Devils have been talked about now. They're a young
hmm,
team, speedy team
yep,
in a growing phase. I don't think anybody thinks they're going to be in a real playoff conversation, but they are. They're playing that way. So hats off to Ottawa.
yeah.
If they are going to start tanking though, and are looking to offload that expensive top line winger, I think the Devils would be a fantastic landing
Hey,
spot.
man, I
That's
got a
the
couple
type of
players to give them.
that's the type of top six guy that they would need. Who would
I'll,
who? Okay, let's hear the mock trade. Let's hear it.
I'm giving them, I think maybe like this offseason I wouldn't have done this,
But now,
but
I think I know what you're
now
gonna say. Number 91.
with certain players not living up to certain billings, hey man, I'd throw both Dawson Mercer and Simon Emich in that trade. I'd
See,
I'd throw
you
both of
lost me
them
a
in
little bit
there.
with Nemo. You lost me a little bit with Nemo. I still think he's gonna. I think he's gonna be.
I think you with And I wouldn't have said that again. I would not have said this
No, certainly
preseason.
not.
With Kovacevic, developing the way he has, I mean, where's the spot for him? I mean,
Oof.
obviously, if he takes a step back, you still have Seamus Casey to step in that right hand spot. I just think, the time to win a cup is starting right now. If you can get that type of player into your top six, with the salary cap set to explode, by the way. Like the salary cap is about to go up like $10 million almost,
Hmm.
apparently, according to reports. So if you're able to do that, if you're able to get that type of player, Brady Kachuk and Matthew Kachuk are unicorns. They don't exist. It's
Hmm.
crazy that a family has two of those players. Um, so if you're able to get a guy like Brady Kachuk, I mean, I'd do almost anything. I'd give up almost anybody to get him. Obviously not our quote unquote established players, but I'd give up like, young guys that have potential like a Nemec. Because again, we know what potential, potential is potential. It's not, you know, guaranteed. So
Hmm.
I think if you're able to get a guaranteed guy that, could put up 100 points easily, and, fight whenever he wants, throw hits, that's his game. Like, I think if you can get that type of player, that's a Stanley Cup winning player right there.
Yeah, I think Nemitz is the type of talent you have to give up to land talent like that going the other way. But if the Senators are in a dire situation, I think the Devils or any other team hypothetically in a trade for Brady Kachuk could get away with less. Um, Kovacevic is an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year,
Yeah.
and he's only making a little under $800,000 right
Yeah,
now.
he's gonna get an extension.
He's gonna
Like
get a
if you can if
he's
you
gonna
can
get a bag
sign,
too. He's gonna get more.
I don't know about
Not
that.
okay relative to what he provides. I think he's
If
gonna
you
make a lot more
can,
money than he's making now.
oh, no doubt.
Yeah.
Um, if you can get him to similar contract of a Siegenthaler, sign me
Hmm.
up. Sign me up.
I yeah, I'm with that too. There's a lot of options, a lot of flexibility in
Yeah,
terms of trades,
obviously,
roster
though
moves.
that's
This
all for the
is
summer episode.
yeah,
But I think we're having a lot of fun this season, and more fun than we did last season in our first
yeah.
year of this podcast. So, those are all hypotheticals in the summer. We both have wishes for this team going forward, but I'm just enjoying Devils hockey right now. It's the one thing we have going on right now that's good. The Mets will change that when they come back in the spring. So if you want to cap this episode off, go ahead, James.
Yeah, and there's another team that plays hockey at the Prudential Center, and they're pretty darn good too. It's the New York Sirens. So
Sarah Fillier and
yeah, Sarah
and
Fillier is a dog
and
rookie.
Carpenter.
Yeah, no,
Carpenter.
I Carpenter's a beast too. For my money, they're the best New York hockey team, of course. If we count them as a New Jersey hockey team, I wouldn't say that, but they're the best New York hockey team right now. That's for sure. So Devils Rangers. If you're listening to this, is going to be at 1 p.m. On the 23rd of December. As we're recording this, it'll be tomorrow. Hopefully, I will be there. I'm not 100% sure yet if I am, but I mean, it's as good as it gets. It's a Christmas gift if I get to go. Devils Rangers, a vulnerable Rangers team. Hopefully, the Devils capitalize on that. If not, I'm knocking on wood right now. So that's all the time we have for Puck on the Parkway this week. Our little holiday special for you guys. Some
Happy
wishes
holidays to everybody.
and yeah, it's been a good time. The Devils have given us a lot to be cheerful for this holiday season. So let's give it back and keep supporting this team all the way through. So for Daniel Rebane, I've been James Burley. This has been Puck on the Parkway. Enjoy, Merry Christmas, and Happy Holidays. And if we don't see you before the new year, have a happy 2025.